Welcome back to Midnight Affair Tales. Thank you for joining us.
The clock on the dashboard blinked 1:32 a.m. as Logan Grayson pulled into his driveway. The neighborhood was dark and quiet. The only sound was the hum of his truck's engine. After 6 months of deployment, he was finally home. But something felt off. He stepped out, duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He had told Delilah he wouldn't be back for another week. This was supposed to be a surprise. But as he reached the front door, he hesitated. A shadow flickered in the upstairs window. His grip tightened on the door handle. Delilah should be asleep. The door wasn't locked. The moment he stepped inside, the air felt different. The house smelled of perfume he didn't recognize. A faint trace of cologne, one he didn't own, clung to the hallway. He moved silently, instincts kicking in. In the dim light, he noticed small changes. A wine glass on the coffee table. A men's jacket draped over the chair. A subtle shift in the arrangement of the pillows. His stomach clenched. Footsteps creaked upstairs. Logan's heart pounded in his chest. He moved up the stairs slowly, carefully. As he reached the bedroom door, he heard it, a hushed whisper. Then silence. His fingers curled into a fist, but he forced himself to stay calm. Was he imagining this? Was this exhaustion playing tricks on his mind? Or was there someone else in his house? Logan pushed the bedroom door open. Darkness. The bed was empty. Sheets slightly wrinkled, but no one was in it. The closet door was slightly ajar. He could hear the faintest sound of breathing. A chill crawled down his spine. He wasn't crazy. Someone was here. He stepped forward, flipping on the light. The closet was empty. His heartbeat slowed, but his mind raced. The jacket downstairs. The wine glass. The perfume. His eyes flickered to the bathroom door. Closed. Delilah. His voice was calm, but sharp. A pause. Then the door creaked open. His wife stood there, wrapped in a silk robe, eyes wide with something he couldn't quite place. Logan? Oh my God, you're home. She rushed to him, arms wrapping around his waist. The hug was warm, but Logan felt nothing. He didn't return it. His arms stayed rigid at his sides. Did I scare you? She asked with a nervous laugh. He pulled back, scanning her face. She looked off. Hair slightly messy, lipstick smudged at the corner of her mouth. Why weren't you in bed? His voice was quiet but firm. She hesitated. I couldn't sleep. I was in the bathroom. Lying. Logan knew when people were lying. He had interrogated terrorists before. This was easy. He stepped past her, scanning the room. No second toothbrush. No towel that wasn't hers. Whoever was here was already gone. Delilah touched his arm. Baby, I missed you. His eyes locked onto hers. Did you? Silence. For the first time in his life, Logan wasn't sure if his wife was telling the truth. The next morning, Logan sat at the kitchen table, pretending to drink his coffee. Delilah was too chatty, too animated. She laughed too loudly at nothing, avoided direct eye contact, and kept glancing at her phone. Guilt. He recognized it a mile away. Then she hit him with something unexpected. I have to go away for work this weekend, she said, stirring her coffee too fast. Last minute. Super important. Logan studied her. She was testing him, seeing if he'd question it. Where? He asked, voice neutral. Seattle. It's a conference. Boring stuff. She forced a smile. Another lie. Then she leaned forward, her voice dropping into something honey-sweet, manipulative. You know, maybe Lena could come stay here while I'm gone. Logan stilled. Your sister. She hasn't seen you in months. I'm sure she'd love to catch up. He knew what this was. A distraction. A cover. She wanted her twin sister to replace her so she could disappear for the weekend. But why? Who was she meeting? And why the hell did she think she could outsmart him? Logan took a slow sip of his coffee, keeping his expression unreadable. Yeah, he said finally. That sounds like a great idea. Inside, his mind was already working. He wasn't just going to play along. He was going to set a trap. Lena Daniels hesitated at the doorstep of Logan's house. Her hands gripped the strap of her purse as she took a deep breath. She had agreed to this switch so many times before, covering for her twin when Delilah needed an excuse. But this time felt different. Logan wasn't the clueless husband Delilah made him out to be. The door swung open before she could knock. Logan stood there, arms crossed. His eyes were sharp, too sharp. Lena swallowed hard. "Hey, big brother," she joked, forcing a smile. Logan didn't smile back. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. The house smelled like coffee and cedarwood, the air thick with something unspoken. Lena had been here many times before, but tonight she felt like she was walking into a trap. She settled onto the couch, playing with the hem of her sweater. "You want coffee?" Logan asked. She nodded. Silence. He moved into the kitchen, his back to her. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt like she was being watched. "So, how's work?" she asked, trying to keep things light. Logan turned, leaning against the counter. His stare was unsettling. "Lena." His voice was calm, controlled. "How long have you been covering for her?" Her stomach dropped. I don't know what you mean." Logan set the coffee down and walked over, sitting across from her. "You do." He tilted his head. "And now I want to know why." Lena had been in tough situations before. Growing up as Delilah's shadow, she had learned how to lie, cover, and deflect. But Logan wasn't some random guy asking simple questions. He was a trained soldier, and he knew she was hiding something. She exhaled slowly, choosing her words carefully. "Look, Logan. Delilah sometimes, she needs space. I don't ask questions." Logan's gaze didn't waver. "You should." She shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't come here to be interrogated." "No." Logan's voice was smooth. "Dangerous. Then why do you look like you're about to run?" She opened her mouth, but he leaned forward. "Relax. I'm not the enemy," he said. Then his tone changed, like a switch flipping. "You know, it's funny. A lot of people have been watching this story unfold." He smirked slightly, tapping his fingers against the table. "Speaking of watching, I wonder where everyone's tuning in from." He leaned back, glancing at the door. "I see you watching, analyzing every word, every move. The way Logan hunts his enemies? That's how you all follow my stories. And I appreciate it. We've hit 1,900 subscribers, an army growing stronger every day. Now, let's push for 2,000. But I want to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. Let's see who's here from the farthest place. You might just be watching from a city where a story like this could unfold." Lena frowned. "What?" Logan chuckled. "Nothing. Just thinking out loud." A chill ran down her spine. What the hell was he planning? Logan checked his phone. The tracker was working perfectly. Delilah's car was heading west, Seattle. Just like she said. But she wasn't alone. Logan smirked as the screen blinked, showing a second signal moving with her. Jacob Harrington. Gotcha. He took a slow sip of his coffee, the warmth grounding him. It was all falling into place. Now, all he had to do was wait. Delilah leaned back in the plush leather seat of the luxury hotel lounge, her fingers tracing the rim of her champagne glass. Across from her, Jacob Harrington, the man she had risked everything for, smiled in that smug way that used to make her weak. Tonight, though, it irritated her. Maybe it was the lingering feeling of being watched, or the way Logan had looked at her before she left. Jacob reached for her hand, fingers warm against her skin. "You're tense, babe. You're free now. Logan thinks you're at some conference. We have the whole weekend." Delilah forced a smile. Did she, though? A waiter walked past, and for a split second, she thought she saw a familiar figure near the bar. Tall, broad-shouldered, military stance. Her breath hitched. No, that's impossible. Logan was home. Delilah. Jacob's voice snapped her back. "You okay?" She shook it off. "Paranoia. That's all it was." She leaned in, lips curling into a seductive smirk. "I'm perfect." What she didn't know was that Logan was already inside the hotel, watching, waiting, letting her fall deeper into her own web. The trap was set. Back in town, Lena sat across from Logan in his truck, hands gripping the seatbelt strap like it was a lifeline. "You're tracking her," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Aren't you?" Logan didn't even glance at her. His fingers tapped against the steering wheel, his expression unreadable. "She made her choices," he said simply. "Now I'm making mine." Lena exhaled, shaking her head. "I never should have agreed to this. I covered for her before, but this is different." Logan finally turned to her. His voice was calm, but the steel underneath sent chills down her spine. "You're damn right it's different." Lena bit her lip. "And what exactly are you planning, Logan?" Silence stretched between them. Then he smiled. But it wasn't a friendly smile. "I'm just making sure she gets everything she deserves." Lena shivered. Logan wasn't just angry. He was calculating. And Delilah had no idea what was coming. Logan stood outside the hotel, leaning against a lamppost, watching. The city lights flickered, the streets buzzing with weekend energy. But his focus was locked on room 1209, where Delilah and Jacob were currently laughing over wine, completely oblivious. He checked his watch. Time to begin. Pulling out his phone, he made the first call. "Yeah, it's me. Send it now." Seconds later, Jacob's phone inside the suite vibrated. A message flashed on the screen. A private, intimate photo of him and Delilah, sent from an unknown number. Jacob frowned, picking up his phone. Another message came in. "Does your wife know?" Jacob went pale. Delilah, noticing the shift in his face, leaned in. "What's wrong?" Jacob's hands clenched around his phone. Then another text arrived. "You have 1 hour before this goes public." Delilah's heart stopped. Jacob shot up from his chair, eyes darting around the room. Someone knows. Someone is. Then the hotel room phone rang. Delilah's blood ran cold. Logan was done watching. It was time to start playing. The hotel room phone rang again. Delilah's pulse pounded in her ears as she exchanged a look with Jacob. Nobody knew they were here. Nobody was supposed to know. Jacob grabbed the receiver with a sharp breath. "Hello." A pause. Then a voice, calm, steady, deadly. "How's the wine?" Jacob froze. His knuckles turned white around the phone. Delilah saw the way his jaw clenched, the way a shadow of fear crept into his eyes. "Who the hell is this?" Jacob hissed. The voice on the other end chuckled. "Check your email." Click. The line went dead. Jacob immediately reached for his laptop, hands moving fast. Delilah stood behind him, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had never seen Jacob scared before. The screen blinked to life, and the email appeared. No subject, no name, just an attachment. Jacob hesitated, then clicked. Photos. Delilah's breath caught. Dozens of pictures of them together. At this hotel. At the bar. Walking through the lobby. Each time-stamped. Each captured from different angles. Her stomach twisted. They were being watched. And at the bottom of the email, a single sentence. 1 hour. Or everyone sees this. Jacob slammed the laptop shut, his face paling. "We need to leave. Now." But Delilah couldn't move. She could barely breathe. Because she recognized that voice. It was Logan. Logan sat in his truck across the street, phone resting in his palm. He had seen the panic. He had watched Jacob pale like a coward and Delilah freeze in terror. Good. The game was just beginning. He reached for his coffee, taking a slow sip as his other phone vibrated. Lena. He let it ring twice before answering. "Yeah. What the hell are you doing, Logan?" she hissed. He smirked. "Having fun." "This isn't funny." Lena's voice was sharp, worried. "Delilah is freaking out. If she finds out it's you, she won't," he said, calm as ever. "Not yet." Lena exhaled. "You're messing with their heads." Logan's grip on the steering wheel tightened. "They messed with mine first." A silence stretched between them. Then, quietly, Lena asked, "How far are you going to take this?" Logan glanced at the hotel room window, where the shadows moved inside. Jacob was packing. Delilah was pacing. They were running. He smiled. "As far as I need to." Jacob threw his duffel bag over his shoulder, shoving his laptop inside. "We need to get the hell out of here. Now." Delilah still hadn't moved. Her face was pale, her hands clenched into fists. She swallowed hard. "You think," her voice cracked. "You think it's Logan?" Jacob stopped. The silence was enough of an answer. Delilah felt sick. Jacob grabbed her wrist. "Let's go. We'll switch hotels, get burner phones." Bang. Both of them jumped as a loud knock hit the door. Delilah's blood ran cold. "Oh God." Jacob hesitated, then reached for the doorknob. Delilah grabbed his arm. "Wait." Jacob ignored her, pulling the door open. A hotel employee stood there. A woman, mid-30s, smiling politely. "Sir, I believe you left something in the lobby. Jacob frowned. What? She held out his wallet. Jacob snatched it. Where did you? But the woman cut him off, lowering her voice. A man asked me to bring it up. Said he'd see you soon. Then she turned and walked away. Jacob and Delilah stared at each other, frozen. Logan wasn't just watching them. He was already inside their world. And he wasn't letting them go. Delilah's hands trembled as she slammed the door shut, her breathing ragged. Jacob cursed, pacing like a trapped animal. He's screwing with us. His jaw was clenched so tight, a vein throbbed at his temple. Delilah rubbed her temples, her head spinning. Logan was in control. She wasn't used to this. For years, she had been the one manipulating, playing the perfect wife while sneaking away for stolen weekends. Now, Logan was twisting the knife, and she could feel the pressure building with every second. Jacob suddenly grabbed her wrist. We need to think. She yanked her arm back. Don't you get it? Logan doesn't play games unless he knows he's already won. Jacob stared at her, and for the first time since they started their affair, she saw something in his eyes she never had before: fear. What does he want? Jacob asked. Delilah bit her lip. Logan wasn't the type to explode in rage. He wasn't the kind of man to storm into a hotel room and throw punches. No, he was worse. He would make her suffer in ways she couldn't even predict. Jacob reached for his phone, gripping it like a lifeline. I need to call my security team. Delilah let out a bitter laugh. You think some bodyguards will protect you from Logan? Jacob hesitated. You're saying he won't stop? She turned away, her stomach twisting. I'm saying he's just getting started. And she was right. Because while Jacob tried to put a plan together, Logan was already 3 steps ahead. Logan leaned back in his chair, a slow smirk playing on his lips. Across from him, Lena sat with arms crossed, her eyes dark with unease. You're enjoying this too much. Logan sipped his coffee. You say that like I don't have a reason to. Lena scoffed. There's revenge, and then there's justice. She fell silent. Logan set his cup down, fixing her with a stare. Delilah played her game for years. Lied to me, used you. She thought she was untouchable. He leaned forward. She's about to find out she's not. Lena shook her head. And Jacob? Logan's smirk widened. Jacob's about to learn what happens when you sleep with another man's wife. Lena shivered. Logan didn't raise his voice. He didn't make threats. But there was something terrifying in how calm he was. Then, his phone vibrated. One new message. From Delilah. Lena saw the way Logan's expression didn't change, the way his fingers tightened slightly around the device. His trap was working. Delilah had finally taken the bait. 11:37 p.m. Delilah stood in the middle of her hotel suite, staring at her phone like it was a loaded gun. She had typed out the message 3 times already. Logan, please. We need to talk. She hated this. Hated feeling powerless. But Logan wasn't leaving her any choice. She had ignored it at first. The strange texts, the hotel photos, the tension that wrapped around her chest every time she turned a corner. But now, she could feel it in her bones. Logan was closing in. Jacob came out of the bathroom, rubbing a towel over his face. Did you send it? Delilah hesitated. Did she really want to? Jacob let out a sharp breath. Look, you need to talk to him. If he's doing this for revenge, maybe you can convince him to back off. She wanted to believe that. But this wasn't a petty tantrum. This wasn't Logan being a jealous husband. This was Logan hunting. She squeezed her eyes shut, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then, before she could lose her nerve, she hit send. Message delivered. Delilah exhaled shakily. Now we wait. Jacob didn't look convinced. Neither was she. Because deep down, she already knew Logan wasn't going to back off. He was going to end this, once and for all. Logan sat at a small corner table in an upscale restaurant, his posture relaxed, his demeanor unreadable. A half-empty glass of whiskey sat in front of him, the amber liquid catching the dim light. He wasn't drinking for pleasure. He was waiting. Delilah had finally taken the bait. The door to the restaurant opened, and in walked the woman who had made him a fool. Delilah scanned the room, her usual confidence fractured. She spotted him and walked over, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She slid into the seat across from him, folding her hands on the table. Logan. His lips barely curled. Delilah. She took a deep breath. I don't know what game you're playing, but Logan leaned forward slightly. Game? You're mistaken. I'm not playing. I'm winning. Her breath hitched. He could see the way her pulse fluttered at her throat. Good. She clenched her jaw. I don't know what you think you know, but Logan pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and slid it across the table. Delilah hesitated before looking, and then her world cracked open. Photo after photo. Her and Jacob. The hotel. The bar. A timestamp of every moment. And below them, a simple message. Checkmate. She swallowed, forcing a laugh. Is this what you wanted? To rub it in my face? Logan's expression didn't change. No, sweetheart. That's just the opening move. Her stomach dropped. Logan, he held up a hand. Save it. His voice was calm, calculated. Too controlled. I'm not here to listen to your excuses. I'm here to let you know what happens next. She flinched at the steel in his voice. You're going to lose everything, Delilah. Your reputation. Your comfortable life. Your money. Every single thing you thought you had control over. He tilted his head. I'm just deciding how slow I want it to be. She exhaled sharply. You wouldn't do that. His smirk was ice cold. You don't know me at all, do you? For the first time in her life, Delilah felt powerless. And she hated it. Delilah had spent years weaving lies. She had built an empire of deception, manipulating everyone around her. But now she was facing a man who didn't believe in mercy. Logan leaned back in his chair, watching her with the patience of a predator. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, she finally said. Logan chuckled, shaking his head. Forgiveness. He exhaled sharply. I don't give a damn about forgiveness. Her fingers curled into fists under the table. Then what do you want? His eyes darkened. To watch you fall. Delilah's throat tightened. Logan stood, tossing a few bills onto the table. Enjoy your night, Delilah. He turned and walked away, his movements effortless, controlled. Delilah's hands shook as she gripped the phone in front of her. She knew him well enough to understand one thing. This wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Jacob was done. His security team had gone through the emails, the messages, the anonymous threats. There was no way to trace them, and that terrified him. Delilah sat on the edge of the bed, her fingers curled around the sheets. Jacob, we need to stick together. Jacob ran a hand through his hair, pacing. No, I need to protect myself. She shot up from the bed. Excuse me. He turned to face her. I have a company to think about. A reputation. If this gets out, I'm ruined. A slow chill crept down Delilah's spine. He was distancing himself. Her lifeline was slipping through her fingers. Jacob, you can't just... He cut her off, his voice cold. I can. And I will. Her stomach twisted. Jacob was saving himself. And Delilah? She was about to fall alone. Logan wasn't a man who rushed revenge. Patience was his weapon. Precision was his power. He sat at his laptop in the dim glow of his office, fingers moving over the keyboard. The private investigator had done his job. Every piece of evidence, every email, every lie was now in Logan's hands. Now, it was time for Delilah's first public fall. With a single click, he sent an anonymous tip to one of the biggest social gossip pages in their city. A message containing a few carefully selected photos of Delilah and Jacob together at the hotel, just enough to plant the first seed of scandal. Not everything. Not yet. Just a taste. Within minutes, his phone buzzed. Lena. You're everywhere, she said, her voice tight. Logan smiled. I know. She let out a slow breath. You're not stopping, are you? Not until she's got nothing left. A silence stretched between them. Then Lena said something unexpected. She deserves it. Logan stilled. He had expected pushback, resistance. But Lena had finally seen the truth. And that meant Delilah's support system was crumbling faster than she realized. Delilah's phone exploded with notifications. First, her colleagues. Then her friends. One by one, they started asking the same question. Is this true? Her stomach twisted as she opened the first message. Then the next. Screenshots. Articles. Posts spreading like wildfire. The affair was out. Jacob's name was everywhere. The pictures. The timestamps. The truth. A sharp knock on the hotel door made her flinch. Jacob opened it, his face pale. This isn't just a private thread anymore, he hissed. This is public. Delilah's breath was shallow. Logan had gone nuclear, and she had no way to stop him. Somewhere in a dark room, Logan leaned back in his chair, watching everything unfold. He glanced at his phone, then smirked. You know, he murmured, I have to take a second to say this. His fingers drummed against the desk. To everyone who's been watching this unfold, thank you. We just hit 1,900 subscribers, and this is just the beginning. His smirk deepened. I see you all watching. But tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. I have a feeling some of you have seen this kind of betrayal before. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Now, let's take this to the next level. Click. The next phase of Delilah's downfall had just begun. Delilah was out of breath, pacing the hotel room like a caged animal. Everything was falling apart. She grabbed her phone, hands shaking, and dialed Logan's number. Straight to voicemail. Her pulse pounded. He was doing this on purpose. Jacob threw his own phone onto the bed, his face pale. I can't risk this, Delilah. My wife's lawyers are already calling me. She turned to him, voice desperate. We need to fix this. He scoffed, shaking his head. There is no fixing this. Your husband is a goddamn ghost. He's always 5 steps ahead. Her stomach twisted. He was right. She had underestimated Logan. And now? Now she was drowning. And Logan was just getting started. Delilah had been powerful once. Untouchable. Beautiful. Admired. Now? She was a walking scandal. She scrolled through her phone, fingers shaking as she read the latest online comments. Karma always comes back around. Imagine being a millionaire and still ruining your life like this. I feel bad for her husband. He deserved better. The words cut deeper than she expected. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a fall from grace. And she knew exactly who was behind it. Logan. The man who had always been so steady, so controlled. She had thought he would walk away quietly, disappear like all the other men she had discarded. She had been so wrong. Jacob stormed into the room, tossing his phone onto the bed. My investors are pulling out. My wife is already filing for divorce. He turned to her, his eyes burning with anger. This is your fault. Delilah flinched. Jacob, no, he snapped. I warned you, Delilah. I told you this wasn't just some jealous husband. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. Logan is a military strategist. He's treating this like a goddamn mission. And we're his targets. A sick feeling crawled into Delilah's stomach. Jacob was right. This wasn't revenge. This was systematic destruction. And Logan wasn't stopping until she had nothing left. Lena sat in Logan's truck, hands wrapped around a hot cup of coffee. She had spent years picking up Delilah's messes. Now, for the first time in her life, she was watching her sister crash and burn. And she didn't feel guilty. She looked at Logan, his expression unreadable. You planned all of this, didn't you? Logan took a slow sip of his drink. I adapted. Lena shook her head. No, Logan. You orchestrated this. The social leaks. The business fallout. You knew exactly how to break her. Logan glanced at her, his dark gaze sharp. Would you have stopped me? Lena hesitated. Would she? For years, Delilah had used her, manipulated her, made her feel like she wasn't enough. Now, for the first time, Lena was free. She took a deep breath. No, Logan smiled. Good. She studied him for a moment. And what happens next? Logan exhaled, his fingers drumming against the steering wheel. Now, he glanced at his phone. The next phase was already in motion. Now, she loses everything. Delilah rushed through her apartment, grabbing whatever she could. She needed money. A new plan. A way out. Her phone rang. She snatched it up, breathless. Hello. A pause. Then, a familiar voice. Cold. Unforgiving. You look panicked, sweetheart. Her breath hitched. Logan. He chuckled. Running already? That's disappointing. Delilah's hand tightened around the phone. You don't have the right to do this to me. Don't I? Logan's voice was calm. Too calm. I was your husband, Delilah. I supported you, loved you. And what did you do? Silence. I hope Jacob was worth it, Logan continued, voice like steel. Because in the next 24 hours, you're going to lose everything. Delilah's throat tightened. You're bluffing. Logan let out a quiet laugh. Then, a second later, her bank app pinged. She pulled up the screen, and her heart stopped. All of her accounts. Frozen. Her credit cards? Declined. Logan's voice was smooth. Deadly. Checkmate. Delilah's hand shook as she refreshed her bank app. 0. Every single account was frozen. Every safety net gone. She felt nauseous. Her breath came fast, panic seeping into her bones. This wasn't just revenge anymore. Logan had cut her off from everything. She scrambled for her purse, ripping through it until she found her emergency credit card. The one Logan didn't know about. She ran to her laptop, typing in the number to transfer funds to another account. Declined. A small choked sound escaped her throat. She tried again. Same result. Then her phone vibrated. Logan. She didn't want to answer. She knew his voice would be calm. Too calm. But she had no choice. She swiped to accept the call. Logan, stop this. Her voice was barely a whisper. Stop. His voice was smooth, like he was bored. You never asked me to stop when you were sneaking around behind my back. Delilah gripped the phone, her knuckles white. You don't have to ruin me. Logan laughed. Oh, Delilah. His voice dropped. You ruined yourself. She squeezed her eyes shut. I can fix this. You can't, he said. Because you have nothing left. Silence stretched between them. Then Logan said something that made her stomach drop. You think money was the only thing I took from you. Her breath caught. What else did you do? Logan hung up. And Delilah had never been more terrified. Delilah grabbed her phone, dialing Jacob's number with trembling fingers. It went to voicemail. No. She called again. And again. Nothing. She clenched her jaw, her hands shaking. Jacob wouldn't abandon her. He wouldn't. Her phone buzzed. A text from him. She exhaled sharply and opened it. Jacob, this is getting out of control. I can't risk my business. I think we should stop talking for a while. Her stomach dropped. No. No. No, no. She dialed him again. This time, he picked up, but his voice was cold. This isn't working anymore, Delilah. Her lips parted in shock. Jacob, you can't be serious. He sighed, frustrated. Look, my team is trying to do damage control. I need to separate myself from this mess. Mess. That's all she was to him now. A liability. Jacob, I click. He hung up. Delilah stood in the middle of her ruined apartment, clutching the phone like it was her last lifeline. She was alone. No money. No Jacob. And worst of all, Logan was still coming for her. Logan leaned against his truck, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. Lena stood beside him, arms crossed. She's unraveling. He nodded. Good. Lena hesitated. Isn't this enough? She's lost everything. Logan smirked. Not yet. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Everything is in place. She'll be completely exposed by morning. Logan exhaled, satisfaction rolling through him. Phase 3. Delilah thought she had lost everything. Tomorrow, she'd realize she still had further to fall. And this time, there would be no way back up. Delilah barely slept. She had spent the entire night refreshing her emails, checking her accounts, and trying to reach Jacob. Nothing had changed. Her money was still frozen. Jacob had still abandoned her. Logan was still out there. By the time the sun crept through her apartment windows, her nerves were completely shot. Then, her phone buzzed. A text. From an unknown number. She hesitated before opening it. Turn on the news. Her stomach twisted, but her shaking hands grabbed the remote. The TV blinked to life. Breaking news. A local anchor stared into the camera, her voice sharp and clear. CEO Jacob Harrington has officially stepped down from his company after a recent scandal involving an extramarital affair with a married woman surfaced online. Documents leaked last night confirm his involvement in financial fraud, sparking an internal investigation. Delilah's blood turned to ice. Her vision blurred as images flashed on the screen. Pictures of her and Jacob. Screenshots of financial records. Emails. The entire city was watching. Her chest tightened. She wasn't just a woman caught in an affair anymore. She was now linked to a financial scandal. This wasn't just about Logan exposing her lies. This was complete annihilation. Her phone rang. "Lena." Delilah answered, voice cracking. "You have to help me." A long silence. Then, "No," Lena said softly. Delilah's breath hitched. "Lena, please. You made your choices, Delilah. And Logan? He's just making sure you live with them." The line went dead. Delilah stared at the phone, her hands shaking. Then the apartment intercom buzzed. Her stomach dropped. Logan was here. Delilah's heart pounded as she stood frozen in place. The intercom buzzed again. She swallowed hard, her throat dry. She had two choices: run or face him. But where could she run? Her bank accounts were locked. Jacob had left her to drown. Her sister had turned her back. And Logan? He had made sure she had nowhere left to hide. Her feet moved toward the door, slow and hesitant. Her fingers shook as she pressed the button. "Logan." A long silence. Then, "Open the door, Delilah." Her pulse thundered in her ears. He was calm. Too calm. She took a shaky breath, unlocking the door. Logan stood there, tall, unshaken, his eyes unreadable. Delilah barely recognized him. This wasn't the man she had married. This was a man who had already won. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Not slamming, not shoving, just shutting it. She took a step back. "You ruined my life." Logan tilted his head, watching her. "No, Delilah. You did that all by yourself." Her lips parted, but no words came. Logan exhaled. "I told you, didn't I? I wasn't going to let you get away with it." She swallowed. "So what now?" His gaze flickered over her. A broken woman, stripped of everything. And then he smiled. Not cruelly, not angrily, just knowingly. "Now." He stepped back toward the door. "Now, I leave you exactly where you left me. Alone." And just like that, he walked out. Delilah felt the weight of it all crushing her. She had played a dangerous game, and she had lost. The news cycle moved fast. By the end of the week, Delilah's name had been buried under new scandals, new gossip, new people to rip apart. Jacob's empire had crumbled. Lena had moved on. And Logan? Logan had never felt lighter. He sat on his porch, a beer in hand, watching the sun dip below the horizon. For the first time in years, he wasn't looking over his shoulder. The war was over. Lena stepped onto the porch beside him, hands in her pockets. "So, what now?" Logan smirked, tipping his beer toward her. "Now? Now I live." And for the first time in a long, long time, he meant it. Delilah sat alone in the cold silence of her apartment. Everything felt different now. The walls that once felt luxurious now felt suffocating. The city skyline outside the window, once a view of power and success, was nothing more than a reminder of how far she had fallen. She had spent days watching everything crumble. Her reputation? Destroyed. Her finances? Frozen. Her social circle? Vanished. And the worst part? No one was coming to save her. She picked up her phone, staring at the empty inbox. No texts. No calls. Not even from Jacob. He had vanished. Like she never existed. Delilah clenched her jaw, swallowing back the rage bubbling in her chest. She thought about Logan's last words to her. "Now, I leave you exactly where you left me. Alone." Her fingers curled around the phone as her breath quickened. No, this wasn't how it was supposed to end. She had always been the one in control, the one pulling the strings. She wasn't just going to sit back and accept this. She had to find a way back, even if it meant breaking every rule in the book. Jacob Harrington wasn't a fool. He knew when to cut his losses and run. Sitting in his private office, he scrolled through the latest news articles. His company was still intact, barely, but his personal life was in shambles. His wife had officially filed for divorce. His board of directors had given him an ultimatum: step down or be removed. Jacob ran a hand down his face, exhaling sharply. He had never lost before. Never. Until Logan Grayson. Jacob had underestimated him. He thought he was just another military guy, someone easy to brush aside. But Logan had played him like a damn chess master. His phone rang. He checked the caller ID. Delilah. His jaw clenched. He could ignore it, walk away completely. But a small part of him wanted to hear what she had to say. So he answered. "What do you want, Delilah?" Her voice was shaky, desperate. "We can fix this." Jacob closed his eyes. She still didn't get it. There's nothing left to fix, he said, his voice cold. We lost. Silence. Then Delilah whispered, not yet. Jacob frowned. What are you talking about? Her voice turned sharper. More dangerous. I'm not going down alone, Jacob. His blood ran cold. Delilah was planning something. And that meant Logan's war wasn't over yet. Logan had thought it was over. He had done everything right. He had broken Delilah's life into pieces, left her in ruins. But something still didn't sit right. Sitting in his truck outside his house, he scrolled through a series of anonymous emails. Threats, warnings, cryptic messages, all leading back to one person, Delilah. Lena slid into the passenger seat, handing him a coffee. You're quiet, she said, studying him. Logan tapped his fingers against the steering wheel. She's not done. Lena's brow furrowed. What do you mean? You took everything from her. Logan clenched his jaw. That was the problem. A woman with nothing left is the most dangerous kind. She's going to do something reckless, he murmured. Something desperate. Lena crossed her arms. So what do we do? Logan exhaled, his grip tightening. We don't wait for her to strike first. Lena blinked. You're going after her? Logan's lips curled into a slow, knowing smirk. I'm making sure she stays buried. And this time, she wouldn't be getting back up. Delilah sat in the corner of a dingy motel room, her fingers gripping a cheap burner phone. She was done waiting. She had spent days in silence, in exile, watching her name become a joke, a scandal, a forgotten story. Logan had ripped her from the life she built, left her to rot while he walked away victorious. But she wasn't finished. She had one last move left. She dialed a number, her hand steady for the first time in days. The line clicked. A voice answered, deep, calculated. You finally called. Delilah swallowed, then forced steel into her voice. I want back in. A pause. Then a slow, amused chuckle. You're toxic right now. No one will touch you. Her fingers tightened around the phone. I know things. Things that could ruin Logan Grayson. Silence. Then, I'm listening. A twisted smirk curled on her lips. Logan thought he had one. But he had forgotten who he was dealing with. Logan was used to silence. Out in the field, in the middle of enemy territory, silence usually meant two things, safety or an ambush. Right now, it felt like the latter. He sat in his truck, parked near a gas station, sipping his coffee. The streets were quiet. Too quiet. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. His gut tightened. He answered, voice sharp. Who is this? A long pause. Then she's coming for you. Logan's blood ran cold. He gripped the phone tighter. Who? A low chuckle. You know who? Then the line went dead. Logan exhaled slowly, setting the phone down. So Delilah wanted to play one last time. Fine. He would end this for good. Lena leaned against Logan's kitchen counter, arms crossed. You look like you're about to go to war, she said. Logan finished loading his gun, his expression unreadable. I am. She exhaled sharply. Logan, he cut her off. She's not done. Lena's jaw clenched. What's the plan? Logan met her gaze, ice cold. I let her come to me. Delilah wanted to fight dirty? She had no idea what she was walking into. Delilah had always been a survivor. She had lied, cheated, and manipulated her way through life, and it had always worked. Until now. Now, she was on the run. She stood in a dark alley, her burner phone clenched in her hand. The man she had contacted, a fixer, someone who specialized in making people disappear, was late. Her nerves were on edge. She knew Logan was watching her, hunting her. But she had one final move left. A black SUV pulled up. The window rolled down just enough for her to see a pair of cold, calculating eyes. You got the money? The man asked. Delilah forced a smirk. You don't get paid until I'm safe. The man chuckled. You don't make the rules anymore, lady. She hesitated. Then the man's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his expression changed. Delilah's pulse spiked. He turned back to her, his voice suddenly colder. Looks like someone already paid me more to keep you here. Delilah's stomach dropped. A familiar voice spoke from behind her. Game over, sweetheart. Logan. Delilah spun around, her breath catching. Logan stood there, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. A soldier assessing his prey. You think you can just drag me back? She hissed. Logan smirked. You think I need to? He gestured to the fixer. He was never here to help you. Her heart pounded. Of course. Logan had outplayed her again. He had set the trap before she even made her first move. You're enjoying this, she spat. Logan shrugged. I like watching people get exactly what they deserve. Delilah clenched her fists. What do you want? Logan stepped closer, his voice low. I want you to feel what I felt. To know what it's like to lose everything. And I want you to understand one thing. His gaze hardened. No one is coming to save you. A shiver ran through her spine. For the first time, she saw the truth. Logan wasn't just trying to ruin her. He wanted her to disappear. Delilah ran. She turned and bolted down the alley, her heels clacking against the pavement. She knew it was useless, but panic had taken over. She sprinted into the street, only for a second black SUV to pull in front of her, blocking her escape. She turned again. Another figure stepped out of the shadows. Lena. Delilah's breath hitched. You. Lena's expression was stone cold. You used me, Delilah. For years. And you never thought I'd fight back? Delilah's hands shook. Lena. No. Lena snapped. This is where it ends. Delilah's world spun. She had nowhere left to run. She had lost. And Logan? He was just here to watch it happen. Delilah had always been a survivor. She had lied, cheated, and manipulated her way through life, and it had always worked. Until now. Now, she was on the run. She stood in a dark alley, her burner phone clenched in her hand. The man she had contacted, a fixer, someone who specialized in making people disappear, was late. Her nerves were on edge. She knew Logan was watching her, hunting her. But she had one final move left. A black SUV pulled up. The window rolled down just enough for her to see a pair of cold, calculating eyes. You got the money? The man asked. Delilah forced a smirk. You don't get paid until I'm safe. The man chuckled. You don't make the rules anymore, lady. She hesitated. Then the man's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his expression changed. Delilah's pulse spiked. He turned back to her, his voice suddenly colder. Looks like someone already paid me more to keep you here. Delilah's stomach dropped. A familiar voice spoke from behind her. Game over, sweetheart. Logan. Delilah spun around, her breath catching. Logan stood there, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. A soldier assessing his prey. You think you can just drag me back? She hissed. Logan smirked. You think I need to? He gestured to the fixer. He was never here to help you. Her heart pounded. Of course. Logan had outplayed her again. He had set the trap before she even made her first move. You're enjoying this, she spat. Logan shrugged. I like watching people get exactly what they deserve. Delilah clenched her fists. What do you want? Logan stepped closer, his voice low. I want you to feel what I felt. To know what it's like to lose everything. And I want you to understand one thing. His gaze hardened. No one is coming to save you. A shiver ran through her spine. For the first time, she saw the truth. Logan wasn't just trying to ruin her. He wanted her to disappear. Delilah ran. She turned and bolted down the alley, her heels clacking against the pavement. She knew it was useless, but panic had taken over. She sprinted into the street, only for a second black SUV to pull in front of her, blocking her escape. She turned again. Another figure stepped out of the shadows. Lena. Delilah's breath hitched. You? Lena's expression was stone cold. You used me, Delilah, for years. And you never thought I'd fight back? Delilah's hands shook. Lena. No, Lena snapped. This is where it ends. Delilah's world spun. She had nowhere left to run. She had lost. And Logan? He was just here to watch it happen. Delilah's breath came in sharp gasps as she backed away, her hands trembling. She was cornered. Logan stood in front of her, his face calm, unreadable. Lena at his side, watching with quiet fury. This wasn't just revenge. This was the final reckoning. You think you can do this to me? Delilah hissed, her voice laced with desperation. I'll find a way out of this. I always do. Logan smirked, tilting his head. Not this time. She turned to Lena. You're my sister. You're really going to let him do this to me? Lena's expression was unreadable. You stopped being my sister the moment you made me part of your lies. Delilah swallowed hard. The realization sank in. She was truly alone. No money. No Jacob. No allies. No escape. Logan reached into his pocket and tossed something onto the ground at her feet. A plane ticket. One way. Leave, he said simply. Go far away. Never come back. Delilah stared at it. Her hands curled into fists. And if I don't? Logan took a slow step forward, lowering his voice. Then I release everything. Her blood ran cold. She knew exactly what he meant. The rest of the evidence. The videos. The recorded calls. The real financial crimes that could put her away for years. Her choices were clear. Exile or destruction. For the first time, she truly understood. Logan wasn't here for revenge. He was here to erase her. The airport was crowded. People moved past Delilah without a second glance. She had once been a woman of status, a woman who demanded attention. Now, she was just another nobody. Her hands clenched around the one thing she had left. A fake passport. A name that wasn't hers. A destination that meant she would never return. She turned, scanning the crowd one last time. And there he was. Logan. Standing near the terminal, arms crossed, watching. His eyes weren't angry. They weren't gloating. They were done. Delilah swallowed the lump in her throat. She wanted to say something, anything, but she knew it wouldn't change a damn thing. She had lost. And Logan? He had won. Without another word, she turned and walked toward her gate. And out of his life forever. The weight was gone. Logan sat on his porch, the cool night breeze rolling in, a drink in his hand. For months, his life had been consumed by war. A battle he never asked for, but one he had finished with precision. Delilah was gone. Jacob was ruined. The past? Buried. Lena stepped outside, hands in her pockets. It's really over, isn't it? Logan took a slow sip of his drink. Yeah. She sat beside him, quiet for a long time. Then so, what now? Logan smirked, leaning back in his chair. Now. He exhaled deeply. Now, I finally live. And for the first time in a long time, he meant it. Logan never thought he would feel at peace again. For months, his mind had been a battlefield, calculating every move, dismantling Delilah's life piece by piece. But now, sitting in his truck on the edge of the city, watching the last flight carrying her away, he felt something he hadn't in years. Relief. He checked his phone. The message was short, from his private investigator. She's boarded. This is done. Logan exhaled, his fingers tightening around the steering wheel. It really was over. Delilah was gone, her influence erased. She would never set foot in his world again. But as the weight lifted from his shoulders, something strange settled in his chest. A hollow feeling. Revenge had fueled him for so long now. Without it, what was left? The sound of knuckles tapping on his window broke his thoughts. Lena stood outside, arms crossed. Logan rolled the window down. It's done, he said. Lena studied his face. So why don't you look happy? He forced a smirk. I'm fine. Lena leaned against the door, shaking her head. Logan, you spent months destroying her. And now that she's gone, you think you can just flip a switch and go back to normal. Logan exhaled. I don't know. Lena was quiet for a moment. Then she pulled something from her pocket, a small, folded piece of paper. What's this? Logan asked. She smirked. Something to keep you busy now that you're not plotting world domination. Logan unfolded it. His brows lifted slightly. It was a list. Hiking trails. Fishing spots. A shooting range. A few weekend getaways. Lena rolled her eyes at his confused expression. It's called having a life, Logan. You should try it sometime. Logan chuckled. Maybe she was right. For the first time in years, he wasn't fighting a war. Maybe it was time to see what living really felt like. 3 weeks later, Logan found himself standing outside a cabin in the mountains, the fresh air crisp and clean. It was different from the battlefield, different from the constant stress of his old life. It was quiet, peaceful, and he needed it. Lena pulled up in her car, hopping out with a bag of groceries. You really picked the middle of nowhere, huh? Logan smirked, grabbing the bags. That was kind of the point. She followed him inside, glancing around. It's nice. You settling in okay? Logan shrugged. It's different. Lena sat on the couch, kicking her feet up. So, no plans to return to your old life? Logan exhaled. I don't know. I spent so much time tearing things apart. I never really thought about what came next. Lena leaned forward. Well, it's about time you do. Logan met her gaze, something shifting inside him. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like a mission to complete. It felt like a beginning. The lake stretched out before Logan, calm and untouched, the water reflecting the golden glow of the evening sun. For the first time in years, his world was silent. No chaos. No deception. No war to fight. Just him in the open air. He sat on the wooden dock, a cold beer in his hand, watching the ripples on the water. The cabin behind him felt more like home than the house he had shared with Delilah ever did. She was gone. The woman who had ripped his life apart had finally disappeared. No more lies. No more games. No more second-guessing every conversation. And the best part? He didn't feel empty. He had won. He had taken back everything she had stolen from him. His pride, his power, his peace. A truck pulled up behind him, tires crunching against the gravel. Lena stepped out, tossing a bag onto the dock beside him. Thought you could use some real food instead of whatever garbage you've been living on. Logan smirked, setting his beer down. Didn't realize I invited you. You didn't. She plopped down beside him. But I figured you'd be sitting here alone, brooding. Thought I'd save you from that. Logan chuckled. She wasn't wrong. They sat in silence for a while, just watching the water. Then Lena spoke. So what now? Logan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. I don't know. Maybe I stop thinking about the past. Start figuring out what I actually want. Lena grinned. That's a first. Logan shook his head. Don't get used to it. She laughed, nudging his shoulder. Seriously, though? No more revenge plots? No more tracking people down in the shadows? Logan smirked. Not unless they deserve it. Lena sighed dramatically. Well, I guess I'll take what I can get. He looked out at the water again, his chest lighter than it had been in years. For so long, his life had been about getting even. Now, for the first time, it was about moving forward. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real victory. Logan leaned back on the dock, hands behind his head. You know, there's something about revenge that makes people think it'll fix everything. He glanced at Lena. But at the end of the day, it's not about winning. He smirked slightly. It's about making sure the right person loses. He took a slow sip of his drink, eyes flickering toward the camera. And speaking of winning, he raised an eyebrow. We just hit 1,900 subscribers. That's insane. A pause. But now the real question is, he leaned forward. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story has traveled. He tilted his head. And while you're at it, if you enjoyed the ride, hit that like button, share it, and if you haven't already, subscribe. A small smirk played on his lips. Because trust me, this is just the beginning.